Hey guys, it's Lydia here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I made my biggest sign that I've ever made with my CNC machine. So let's get started. Alright guys, welcome back. So I am actually outside right now because I just filmed the final result of the sign. Now this thing looks awesome and I can't wait to show you guys how it looks and how I made it. So stay tuned and let's get started with the build. So the first thing I had to do was cut this plywood down. Now this is 3/4 of an inch of 4x8 plywood. Now I only needed 6x4 because that was the size of the actual sign that I was going to be making. So once I got it cut, I started sanding it down. I started with 80 grit, and I just wanted to get rid of all of the roughness on top. This was about 30 bucks, this sheet of plywood, so kind of expensive, but then again, that's how much plywood costs. And so I just sanded it down once again to make sure that there was nothing that I could catch my fingers on. I wouldn't get any splinters or anything. And then I switched it to 220 grit just to get it a little softer and ready for me to do a gray wash on it. So just sanding it down didn't take that long. It was pretty fast. And then for the gray wash, I just used some acrylic paint, black and white, as you can see here in my jar, and just mixed it with some water. And then all I had to do was wipe it down onto the board, and this was actually pretty light. Now the end result is a little darker than this, but I just wiped it all down and then I let it dry for a couple days just to make sure it would seep in there. And as you can see in the middle here, it was a little darker. Now that was because I just dumped out the rest of the wash that I had, and it was a little darker on the bottom, but after that I just let it dry. So after it finished drying, I went and sanded it with 80 grit because I wasn't really happy with how it looked, but I knew that obviously it was still going to stain it a little bit gray. So I just went in and sanded most of the paint off as much as I could, at least on the top coat that I had put on there, and just made sure once again everything was super smooth. I really wanted this sign to be as smooth as possible. And then I went in with 220 grit once again. And after sanding it completely, again, I did another coat of this gray wash. Now this was a lot darker, as you can see here, and I actually got a cleaner base this time, a cleaner layer throughout the whole thing because I mixed the paint a little bit more. I just shook it up in the jar that it was in and made sure everything was pretty even as I laid it on there. I just used a rag this time instead of a paper towel. And after that, again, I went in and sanded just with 220 grit this time because I didn't really want to take anything off that much. And this was just to prepare it to get ready for putting on the exterior coat. Now this is some really nice exterior coat. What I'm using is this really nice exterior Varathane Ultimate spar urethane outdoor coat, and I just used a dollar store roller, which unfortunately fell apart obviously because it was only $1 after doing the first coat on this, but as you can see it actually created it a lot darker. Now hopefully in the end this will be the right gray for the client, but other than that I just did this one coat and then I'll let it dry for a couple days, and then I'll do a couple more after everything is dried. So now what I'm doing is I'm sealing up these pieces of wood with the same exact Varathane. Now what these are for is for the engravings of the dog faces that will be on the sign, and there were some gaps, so what I just did was I used some of this sawdust, as you can see here down here in the corner, and I just rubbed it into the gaps before I actually did seal it up, and that actually worked very well. So if you have gaps, then you can do that too, and it just hides it once you paint it with the Varathane. And so I just sealed these up, and I did about a couple coats on it. And now as you can see here, I am doing the same thing on this MDF. Now I know what you guys will say in the comments, that MDF will warp and will be bad in the outside, but with this Varathane I'm putting 2, 3, maybe even 5 coats on both sides, so hopefully it will become waterproof and weatherproof and eventually just last a long time. And so that is what I'm also going to be doing for this other wood. As you can see here, I'm putting another coat on. I'm just going to put maybe 3 coats of each, and then I will coat everything else once everything is actually cut and engraved. Alright, so after the first layer was dry of the sealer on the board, I actually didn't like how dark it was, so I went in with some white paint on this roller, just plain acrylic paint, and I tried to spread it out, and then I went in with a wet washcloth, and I just tried to smear it around, tried to blend it in a little bit more. Obviously, it didn't go as great as possible because I already put the water sealer on it, but I then went in with sanding or sand block, and then I just sanded it, and I think I got it pretty well, and it actually looked pretty nice after that. It was a little messy in my opinion. It more looked like a whiter camouflage, but eventually I got it to look nice. So then I went in with another coat of the Varathane, and this went on super easy. I just used a rag this time because I thought it was easier than a roller, just because I didn't want to ruin another roller. And then I did eventually go in and do the back of this board also, but I used just one coat of this Varathane, and then I just used plain oil-based polyurethane because I didn't have enough of this left, and I knew maybe 4 or 5 coats of the polyurethane was enough. And I also did put one coat of polyurethane on the top of this just because I wanted to make sure everything was sealed, and I've used polyurethane for outdoor things before also. So I had all of my pieces cut out, all the letters. This was out of my MDF once again, and don't worry, I will be sealing them again in this next clip. I just wanted to make sure that everything looked nice on the board. So as you can see here, I'm sealing everything with the Varathane once again, and because this was already pre-sealed, just the top and bottom of the letters, I didn't really do any more of the top and bottom. I just did more of the sides because the MDF was now exposed because we cut it out of the actual sheets that we already sealed. So I just did this outside. It was a lot easier and a lot nicer to do it outside. It was a little windy, but the smell went away really fast. If I would have done it downstairs in our shop, it would have been a little bit stinkier. But other than that, I just sealed them up. And then it actually got really too windy and it started raining. So I had to go inside and do it again. And now I did probably 4 or 5 extra coats on the outside of these once again because I wanted to make sure that they were sealed up completely. And I didn't want them to be expanding if they got wet because this sign will be outside and exposed to all weather conditions. So I just wanted to make sure everything was sealed up. And things got really sticky, so if you do use this stuff, definitely use gloves. As you can see here, I'm using gloves. And I actually did try dunking them in there, but then I just got too much on the top and bottom, so then I just went back to using the rag. So I let them all dry, and then I did it one more time, and I didn't show it, but then I went in painting them. Now the bottom letters are red, and the top big letters are going to be green, and so it's these custom colors that I made. I don't really know what kind of red the bottom is, but the top one's more of a hunter green, more of like the acres green. And then the other parts of the animals, the deer head will be black. And I just went in and did about 2 or 3 coats of each color on the letters just to make sure everything was good. And then after that, I had to go in again with my sealer and seal everything up once again because I didn't want the paint to be coming off. And it probably will fade a little bit in the sun because it will be outside all the time. But as you can see here, I'm doing the deer. Now, I did actually do a design color change. The client actually changed their mind. They only wanted the deer head to be black. I was going to do the entire deer head, including the antlers, black, and also the pheasant was going to be black, but we changed it to where just the deer head was going to be black, and I was going to leave the pheasant and the antlers just this brown that was the MDF. And next here, I set up our router table to put a little bit of a smooth round over on the dog cutouts that I did. Now, I didn't show the engraving of this. Now, I was going to, but I didn't have an extra camera to do this, so unfortunately, I couldn't show that. But what you could see I was doing there was just testing it out to make sure I had the right depth. And here I am just doing all the ones that I already had cut. Now, the last one in the background, as you can see, is being cut. It took like 4 hours to do, so that's why I couldn't show that. And then next here, I have everything cut out and painted, as you can see here, except for the pheasant and the antlers. Those were the last things I was doing. And I just went in with this Titebond 3, which is waterproof and super, super durable glue. And I went in with our carpenter or our drywall square. And I made sure everything was straight. And I tried to get everything even as possible. And it wasn't really that hard to do. But once I got everything glued down on the bottom, I let that dry for a little bit, and then I went in to do the dog. Now, I tried to space them out as even as possible, and I wanted them to be wide enough so there was a big enough gap between each of them.
but I glued those down, and then I just went in to do the Harris Acres. Now, I don't show at the end, but I do screw in 2 screws on the back of each of the dogs to make sure that everything sticks and everything is secure onto the board, just to make sure nothing comes off. And so I just let them dry, and then I went in with a air nailer and I nailed everything in that was MDF to make sure nothing would come off later after it was outside. And then I had to do the deer, as you can see, and my mom and I actually filled in the gaps of the staples that made the gaps, and then we just went over and painted them to cover them up. Now, this thing would be farther away, so you wouldn't be looking at it close up, so we got to cover it. And as you can see here, this is the final sign.
Alright guys, so this is it. This is the final sign. Sorry if it's a little windy. I am outside and I don't have a microphone on, but this is the final product. And now I think this thing turned out really awesome. It did take about a week to do. I really was pushing myself to try to get it done by a certain point, and I succeeded, and it looks really awesome up here. Now this is actually a sign for my one of my family members, and it looks really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed how I showed you each step. Now I didn't do very much filming of the engraving and the carving and also the cutting out. Now I apologize for that. I just was in a time rush, and but other than that, it turned out great. If you guys have any tips or anything you want to tell me down below in the comments, please let me know. I will answer them or comment back on them as soon as possible. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.